I lost a dare at a class reunion. Classmate, call your top contact on Facebook and say, "Honey, I miss you." With gritted teeth, I made the call and said it. To my surprise, the person replied, "I miss you too." My classmates immediately went into gossip mode, asking when I secretly got married. Help, that person was my boss, whom I barely even know. During Christmas break, my high school classmates, whom I hadn't seen in years, organized a reunion in the group chat. I seized the chance to escape the endless questions from my family. We played truth or dare at the reunion. The whole evening went smoothly until the very end, when I finally lost. Faced with a group of people gleefully eyeing me, I chose a dare. Classmate, call your top Facebook contact and say, "Honey, I miss you." But my top contact is my boss, since I keep him pinned to catch any important messages. I hesitated, but he's my boss. Classmate, are you married? I shook my head. Classmate, then call him. With great reluctance, I dialed, praying he wouldn't answer. But within 3 seconds, his deep, suave voice came through. "What's up?" Under my friend's watchful eyes, I clenched my teeth and said, "Honey, I miss you." After a pause, he replied, "I miss you too." My friends covered their mouths, staring at me in shock, and I quickly hung up. "I'm not married. It's not what you think." A classmate grinned. "We get it. Office romance. Keep it low-key." I covered my face in embarrassment. "No, you don't get it." At least I could be grateful I wasn't working for the next few days. Otherwise, I'd be beyond embarrassed to face Rocky. Though honestly, for him to respond like that, he was probably drunk and would likely forget by tomorrow. The next day, I put the incident out of my mind. On the second day of the new year, I heard my dad laughing through the door. Then my mom knocked, speaking unusually softly. "Haley, time to get up." I was a bit confused by her sudden sweetness. Then she added, "Your boyfriend's here. Come out and greet him." I bolted upright, thrown into shock. "Boyfriend? What boyfriend?" My mom, grinning ear to ear, replied, "Of course, your boyfriend. Such an outstanding guy, why hide him? You should have introduced him sooner." I looked past my mom and saw a man in a suit sitting on the living room sofa. Broad shoulders, narrow waist, poised and composed. Wait, could he be a scammer? Or an insurance salesman? I pulled my mom aside and closed the door gently. "Mom, he didn't ask you for money, did he?" She swatted me. "What are you saying? He just gave us a red envelope as a courtesy. Why would he be a scammer?" I awkwardly replied, "But Mom, I don't have a boyfriend." My mom paused, then said, "Well, he could be an ex-boyfriend then. He's already at our door. Maybe you two can rekindle things. He's a handsome guy." And I gave him a 500 yuan red envelope. "What?" I said, shocked. "You only give me 100 yuan. Am I even your real daughter?" She gave me a look. "You're not. I got you when I topped up my phone credit. No way would I give birth to such a foolish daughter." I sighed. "Fine, if he's not my boyfriend, maybe he's at the wrong house. Let me get rid of him." "No need. Don't bring bad luck around so early in the new year." She tried to hold me back, but I dodged her with a quick move, dashing into the living room, where I greeted him with, "Happy New Year, Uncle, wish you prosperity." But then I stopped dead. It was my boss. Staring at my impeccably dressed boss, I realized I hadn't even washed up, my hair a mess, and I was embarrassed enough to want to sink through the floor. Rocky stood up and looked at me gently. "Haley, Happy New Year." I was flustered. Had he lost his mind? Rocky continued, "I didn't plan to make our relationship public so soon, but after you called me that day, my parents already knew. They want to know when I can bring you home to meet them." In a flash, I realized what happened. That call had likely been overheard and misinterpreted. So now he was here to mess with me further, letting me be misunderstood all over again. Classic Rocky, never one to let things slide. But I wasn't about to let him off so easily either. Why not use him as my shield while I could? I wrapped my arm around his, catching a glimpse of his slightly stunned expression, and smirked. "Mom, Dad, this is Rocky, my boyfriend." I sat in the living room, snacking as my parents grilled him, laughing inside at his predicament. "Rocky, you're finally getting a taste of your own medicine." At the dinner table, I kept piling on his plate with dishes I knew he'd hate. Greasy pork, garlic, ginger, cilantro, even spicy Sichuan peppers. He looked from confused to mildly annoyed as I smiled. "I know you love it. Eat as much as you like." Under the table, he squeezed my hand lightly, whispering, "Thanks a lot." Feeling the threat, I quietly went back to eating. My mom suddenly asked, "How long have you two been dating? When are you planning to get married?" I looked up at Rocky, wondering what kind of story he would spin next. Rocky gazed at me with a gentle expression. "We haven't been together for long, but we already know each other well enough. I can't imagine my future without Haley in it." I rubbed the goosebumps on my arms, feeling a shiver. I shot Rocky a look, silently telling him not to exaggerate. He just smirked slightly and continued. My hope is that we can get married soon, though the civil affairs office might still be on holiday, so it could take a couple more days. As for the wedding, our families need to discuss it thoroughly, but all the formalities will be observed. This was a shock to my whole family. My chopsticks even dropped the chicken leg I was holding. I kicked Rocky under the table, annoyed at his nonsense. How am I supposed to explain this to my parents later? Tell them he died, so we can't marry? My dad hesitated. Isn't this a bit fast? You've only just met the parents. Rocky turned to me with a tenderness that seemed too real, as if we were a deeply in love couple. Some people are meant to be together, so sooner is better than later. He casually pulled out a large set of car keys from his pocket. By the way, Uncle, would you like to go on a road trip over the holiday? I have several cars in the garage just gathering dust. Feel free to pick one. It'll make commuting easier too. I saw my dad's eyes widen. Rocky then turned to my mom. Auntie, I understand your concerns for Haley. I have a few properties in Canada. After we get married, we can live there. And you can also choose one to stay in so Haley can visit you often. My mom beamed, pulling out the family registry with a flourish. Oh, don't call me auntie. Call me mom from now on. As one of the people involved, I was completely dumbfounded. Coming to my senses, I quickly spoke up to stop this charade. Actually, we're not. Rocky suddenly took my hand, smiling softly and cutting me off. From now on, all my salary will go to Haley. I won't even have the chance to mistreat her. This is the dowry, he whispered in my ear. It's in the 7 figures. If it's too little, I can add more. The password is my birthday. Holding the bank card he handed me, I felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. I was silent. I gave in. Capitalism's sweet incentives were hard to resist. On the 7th, back to work. I clutched the family registry, hesitating to get in the car. Rocky looked straight at me through the window, tapping the steering wheel with a hint of intimidation. Having second thoughts? Faced with sudden wealth, it's normal to feel elated. But after thinking it over, doubts and suspicions inevitably crept in. Why do you want to marry me? I'm so ordinary, and we're not close. If you're just looking for someone to appease your family, it doesn't have to be me. I took a cautious step back. Honestly, after considering it, I suspected he might want to lure me back and harvest my organs. Or take my heart for his ailing first love, or maybe he just needed my corneas. Rocky chuckled lightly. You're not ordinary. You're different from others, you're special. The way he looked at me was so gentle, like a spring breeze, it was almost drowning. I felt my ears heating up. I replied, what makes me different from others? As soon as I said it, I realized my tone was wrong, like I was shyly flirting with him. Darn these capitalist sweet talk techniques. Annoyed and embarrassed, I blurted out, Rocky, I suspect you're involved in organ trafficking. Rocky chuckled. What, are you trying to say I've stolen your heart? My face immediately turned red. That's not what I meant. It's 2023. Who even uses such cheesy lines anymore? Rocky's eyes twinkled with laughter. You're talking to me through a door. Are you afraid that being close to me would mean losing your heart? Stop talking nonsense. I climbed into the car angrily, defiantly looking at him. See, I'm not afraid of you, so stop talking nonsense. Alright, since you're not afraid, let's go to the civil affairs office now. On the way, I realized something was wrong. Wasn't I just about to back out? How did I end up in the car going to the civil affairs office? At the entrance of the office, I stopped in my tracks. Rocky looked at me. What's wrong? I looked at him, took a deep breath, and said, Boss, I'm sorry. I don't think we're suitable. You should find someone else to marry. Rocky's deep, beautiful eyes stared into mine, making me feel like a wolf was watching me. What do you mean we're not suitable? Or, is there someone else you like? We're not close. I can't accept living with someone I barely know, let alone sharing the same bed. Rocky took a step forward, his eyes downcast as he looked at me. Is there any other reason? I lowered my head, unable to meet his gaze. I don't want to sell my future just for money. I think the most important thing in life is happiness. Besides, you don't need me specifically. Rocky gently placed a hand on my shoulder, making me look up, only to meet his deep, intense gaze. He whispered, You're right. Enjoying life is important too. Sensing danger, I quickly pushed his hand away, not fully catching what he said. Stay away from me. I looked up to see his expression darken slightly, and I hastily added, I mean, it's a bit warm with you so close. I regretted saying that immediately. It's the middle of winter, what warmth? No worries, I'm not trying to pressure you. Rocky rubbed his brow, returning to his usual self. I just need someone to deal with my family, and you happen to be the one. It's that simple. He let out a long sigh. I should have made it clear from the start. In this marriage, you don't have to fulfill any marital obligations. If you meet someone you like, you're free to ask for a divorce. I'll transfer my salary to you every month. I hesitated again. So, we'll sleep in separate rooms? And, how much is your monthly salary? That's up to you. Mainly, it's for dealing with family. I make about $30,000 a month, but my income mostly depends on dividends. During the marriage, you can charge any expenses for furniture or luxury gifts to me. The balance in my mind started to tip. This offer was hard to refuse. Rocky added, if it makes you feel better, I'll have someone draft up a marriage contract, listing all the terms we mentioned. Can I think about it a bit longer? I asked. Rocky glanced at his watch, his tone formal. I'll give you 3 more minutes to decide. I have other appointments this afternoon. I can't waste more time. Then, what about in a few days? I asked again. Rocky frowned at me, then chuckled coldly with a hint of sarcasm. My time is precious, and the holiday is almost over. Have you still not decided? Or, have you been playing with me this whole time? I suddenly didn't know what to say. I didn't understand why Rocky's attitude had changed so abruptly, becoming so intense and commanding. But then I remembered that in the office, he was always like this. Authoritative, decisive, serious, and unyielding. This was his true self. Rocky urged, have you decided? 3 minutes are up. His tone carried a hint of impatience. I quickly responded, yes, I'll marry you. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the civil registry office as if I were heading toward a noble sacrifice. Fortune favors the bold, after all, and this was just marriage, nothing to be afraid of. As I held the newly issued marriage certificate in my hands, it still felt surreal. I recalled that I once swore to be single for life, to travel the world solo after retirement and live freely. How did it all end up like this? Suddenly, the marriage certificate was pulled from my hands. I looked up to see Rocky nonchalantly slipping my copy into the inner pocket of his coat. Unable to resist, I blurted, boss, that's mine. We each get one. With a sidelong glance, Rocky replied, I earned this marriage through my own efforts, so the certificates are both mine. Any problem with that? I blinked, a bit indignant. You make it sound like you could marry yourself. Give it back. Leaning against the car door with his arms crossed, Rocky raised an eyebrow. Want it so badly? Then come and get it yourself. I glared at him. Pervert. What did he expect me to do? Rip open his coat in public like some kind of hooligan? With a smirk, Rocky helpfully reminded, time's ticking. If you want it, better act fast. Seeing his triumphant grin, I was struck by how devious he could be behind that polite exterior. Fine, if you don't want it, let's just head back, he said, sounding almost disappointed. Yeah, right. The more he smirked, the more annoyed I felt. I bumped him with my shoulder, stomped to the other side of the car, and sat in the passenger seat. Rocky opened the driver's side and got in too. I shot him a look before turning away to stare out the window. Little pufferfish. Rocky's voice rang out beside me. Not realizing how close he had moved, I turned my head, startled by his face so close, flawless from every angle. My heart skipped a beat. I leaned back to create some space and composed myself before asking, why did you suddenly get so close? You scared me. With an innocent tone, he replied, we're about to drive, and your seatbelt wasn't buckled. He reached over my shoulder and pulled the belt across, fastening it. I have hands. Couldn't you just tell me? I protested. He raised his hands apologetically. Sorry, little pufferfish, my bad. I promise I'll speak up next time instead of acting. Who are you calling a pufferfish? Yes, we're both pufferfish, he said in a dismissive tone. Now, let's go see our parents. Our parents? Looking at the impressive little villa before me, I glanced down at my casual outfit, empty-handed, feeling panicked. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Do I look presentable like this? Rocky frowned slightly. What's wrong? You're already married. Are you thinking of backing out? He reached out to hold my hand, but I shook it off, exasperated. I didn't understand how a piece of paper could mean everything was magically resolved. Was a marriage certificate supposed to be some kind of shield? Annoyed, I said, I didn't bring anything. Is that polite? Rocky chuckled. So you care what my parents think, do you? He held my hand again, smiling apologetically. Sorry for not mentioning this earlier, but I already have everything prepared in the trunk. We'll get it later. They'll love you no matter what you're wearing. As we approached the door, a thought occurred to me. Wait, didn't you say you had something to do this afternoon? How are we here now? I stopped, suspiciously eyeing him. Rocky raised an eyebrow, feigning seriousness. Bringing you home isn't important enough? But this whole setup hinged on the assumption I'd say yes to marriage, and he'd already bought the gifts in advance, he was sure I'd agree. I had to admit, I'd fallen right into his plan. A sudden urge to run crossed my mind. Maybe he really had designs on my organs after all. Rocky placed a firm hand on my shoulder, his voice calm and steady. You can't escape me now. It's the final step. Shall I push you in, or do you want to go yourself? How could he know me so well? Reluctantly, I knocked on the door. Once inside, I realized Rocky's home wasn't the intimidating place I'd imagined. In fact, it seemed more like a gilded trap than a dangerous lair. Rocky's parents, looking quite well off, were friendly and warm toward me. This must be Haley, his mother smiled. Such a sweet girl, just right for our Rocky. Then, she took off her large gold bracelet and ring, sliding them onto my wrist. Here's a little welcome gift from me. Rocky's father quietly handed over a card, saying, anything you need, just buy it. We're not good at picking things young people like. I hesitated, glancing at Rocky. Looking perfectly calm, he said, take it. It's just a token from my parents. Rocky's parents were warm and considerate, striking the perfect balance so I didn't feel pressured. After lunch, they invited me to play cards with them. We need one more. Haley, join us, or we won't have enough players. With Rocky's parents and their cook, plus me, we made the perfect 4. I don't know how to play. Let Rocky join instead. I declined. But Rocky's mother took my hand and smiled. It's all right, let Rocky teach you. Any losses are on him. Go play. Don't worry, I won't let you lose too badly, Rocky said, giving me a gentle push. I couldn't refuse, so I ended up joining the card game. Oh well, if I lose, I lose. With Rocky's guidance and his parents' generous help, I, an absolute novice, ended up winning repeatedly. For the first time, I felt the joy of playing cards. Our parents are such lovely people. I murmured as I lounged in the back seat, counting a thick stack of crisp bills, 10s, 20s, even 50s. Rocky glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Like them? You can come visit them more often. I squirmed happily in my seat, grinning. Oh, I wouldn't want to impose. Rocky chuckled but didn't reply. So, where are we headed now, boss? I asked. You'll see when we get there. The moment I walked into a room filled with gorgeous white dresses, I almost gasped. Since we have the time today, we might as well pick out the wedding dresses. Rocky gestured with a nod. Pick a few. What? A few dresses? I couldn't imagine affording even one of these. Rocky shot me a sideways glance. Relax, I'm paying. I gave him a sycophantic smile. Thanks, boss. You're so generous. I turned and surveyed the room full of gowns, momentarily at a loss. They were all so beautiful, it was hard to choose. After a moment's thought, I turned to Rocky for help. Boss, which one do you like? I'll try it on for you. Rocky's expression darkened slightly. We're not at work now. Just call me by my name. Then he turned to the staff nearby, instructing, bring over all the dresses from that row. Haley, go try them on. One by one, I tried on each dress, moving from excitement to fatigue. Rocky sat on the sofa, legs crossed, offering feedback with great interest. This one's all right. This one, too revealing. Not good. This one's nice, but one isn't enough. This one, not suitable. This one's good too, but let's see the next one. Frustrated, I threw a dress at him. Was he treating this like a fashion game? Rocky looked up, confused. What's wrong? I'm done. I glared at him. You're acting like you're in some dress-up game. Rocky scratched his nose, a bit sheepish. Then, how about I try some on for you? You go pick. There are plenty of suits here too. Where? The staff nearby stepped forward. In the back room. I'll show you. I followed the staff into a room lined with suits on all sides. Scanning through the racks, I held back a mischievous grin and selected the most flamboyant, gaudy suits I could find. Here you go. Try these on. Rocky glanced at the suits in front of him, then shot me a complex look. So, this is the style you like. My face reddened. I don't. Rocky gave me a knowing look. I understand. With that, he took the clothes into the changing room, leaving me reaching out helplessly, thinking, asterisk no, you don't understand. Asterisk. When the door opened, Rocky stepped out confidently. The pink suit he wore didn't look garish at all. Instead, it added a youthful energy and allure to his charm, his captivating eyes seeming to draw me in. Well, do you like it? I quickly looked away, feigning indifference. It's all right, I suppose. Rocky walked over, leaning down to my ear with a soft laugh. Your face is all red. Looks like you really do like it. It's just hot. Flustered, I pushed him away, hearing his laughter. Annoyed, I snapped, don't you come on to me like that. You're dressed and acting all innocent now, but who knows what kind of flirt you are in private. Do you know a man without self-respect is just like a cabbage? I turned, realizing the staff was trying hard to stifle their laughter, face flushed. Sorry, please continue. I didn't hear a thing. She turned away, pretending not to have witnessed anything. Embarrassment filled the air. Thinking about what I just said, I wished I could disappear. But Rocky seemed unfazed by my discomfort and said, "Since you've seen it all, I'll go change into the next one." I got up weakly. "Forget it. Choose by yourself. I'm leaving." "Wait." Rocky tugged my collar, pulling me back with a frown. "Where are you running off to?" "I'm taking you home." He turned to the staff. "Wrap up all the clothes she picked out and send them to the Jin Yang apartments." I grabbed his sleeve, puzzled. "You're buying all of those suits?" Rocky leaned in close, his lips almost grazing my ear as he whispered, "To wear just for you. Or not, if that's what you'd prefer." My face flushed bright red. What kind of suggestive comment was that? I pushed him away, muttering softly, "You, don't do that." "What? Do what, exactly?" Rocky intentionally dragged out the last word, his voice laced with an inexplicable allure. His gaze made me nervous. "You're going to make me think you actually like me. We're just in a contract marriage." Suddenly, Rocky stretched his arms around me, his chin resting gently on my shoulder. I could feel the faint rumble of his chest as he laughed. "Silly girl, I'm taking you home." My heart skipped a beat, something inside me almost bursting out. I muttered, "I'm not a fool." Rocky rested his head on my shoulder, chuckling happily. "Yes, you're not a fool. I am. Let's go. Time to head back." I nudged him. Noticing the glances from people around us, I felt a sudden surge of embarrassment. As soon as I entered the company, I sensed an atmosphere of joy and excitement. Everyone's gaze seemed to carry a hint of scrutiny. What's going on? When I returned to my workstation, I was met with my colleagues' glowing eyes. "The boss's wife has arrived. Please take good care of us from now on." It was then that I realized what those stares from earlier meant. "But where did you guys get this information? I only got married yesterday, so how does everyone already know?" The boss posted it on his social media. Everyone who follows him on Facebook saw it. Besides, my colleague across from me raised a handful of wedding candy. The company even handed out candies. I was utterly shocked. When did this happen? How come I didn't know? The general manager's assistant sent a message to everyone yesterday to go to the front desk and pick them up. "Do you need someone else to remind you to collect your own wedding candy?" My neighboring colleague leaned over with a gossipy look. "By the way, Haley, how did you manage to win over the boss? Any tips? Is this the dream romance come true? Tell us how you got together. How long have you two been together? And, is Rocky good at it?" After that question, there was a brief moment of silence, and 3 pairs of eyes were fixed on me. My face turned red, and I thought of last night, of Rocky coming out of the bathroom with that intense, chiseled look. I stammered, unable to answer. I don't know. But haven't you been secretly living together for a while? How could you still not know?" The colleague sitting opposite me glanced down at my neck, then covered her mouth and laughed. Then I remembered the red marks I saw on my neck in the mirror this morning. I'd slept well last night, so they must have been mosquito bites. I even applied ointment on them. "You're mistaken. Those are mosquito bites." My colleague teased, "We get it. It must have been a really big mosquito." With all the laughter around me, I clamped my mouth shut. It seemed there was no explaining this misunderstanding. It was all because of Rocky and his big mouth. During my lunch break, I stormed into the CEO's office. "Come in." I pushed the door open and met Rocky's gaze. A week off had left the company with plenty of backlogged issues, and he looked a bit tired. My anger subsided a bit. Rocky put down the file in his hand and relaxed his expression. "What are you doing here? What would you like for lunch? I can order for us." I closed the door and finally voiced my frustration. "Why did you make our marriage public? What if we get divorced later?" Rocky's face darkened, his eyes fixed on me. "Are you that eager to get divorced?" Startled by his sudden change in expression, I instinctively took a step back. I gave in quickly, shaking my head. "No, I was just asking. I'll get going now." I turned and was about to open the door to make a quick exit, hoping to come and go as fast as possible. Unfortunately, Rocky's office isn't a bathroom, so he called me back. "Come here." Rocky tilted his chin slightly. I stood still. "Am I that scary?" Rocky chuckled. "Come on, don't you want the contract I promised you?" "Yes." I reluctantly moved over. "Where is it?" Rocky leaned back in his chair and looked at me lazily. "What?" "The contract." Suddenly, Rocky hooked his leg behind my knee, and I lost my balance, falling straight onto him. "Do you really not trust me?" I'd feel like I missed an opportunity if I didn't do something. He held my neck with one hand, gently stroking it, while the other hand was firmly on my waist. We were so close we could have kissed with just a tilt of our heads. If I still hadn't realized Rocky had ulterior motives, I'd be a fool. I couldn't break free, my face turning red, and I muttered, "You're a liar, let me go." Sensing my genuine anger, Rocky released me and helped me sit upright. "I was just joking. I'm sorry, I didn't realize you were so sensitive. But since we're already married, we're bound to have some physical contact in public, so you might as well get used to it." I slapped his hand away unceremoniously. "That's just an excuse to take advantage of me, isn't it? You just want my body. You're shameless. Let me go." Rocky let go of me, then took a lipstick from his pocket and handed it to me, saying slowly, "It's not that, I didn't mean it that way." Looking at the familiar logo on the lipstick, I felt like all the face I'd saved in my life was gone in that moment. "Didn't you mention wanting this one before? So, I bought it for you." I grabbed the lipstick and made a hasty escape. In the employee cafeteria, I was sitting in a corner, eating my lunch when Rocky called. "Where are you?" "Eating lunch." "Where are you eating? If you don't tell me, I'll go ask around." I stabbed at my food, reluctant. "In the employee cafeteria, far left corner by the window." "Wait there for me." "Okay." I hung up and immediately ate as quickly as I could, hoping to leave as soon as Rocky arrived. But Rocky was quick, though not quicker than me. "You finished eating?" He frowned at me. "Why didn't you wait for me?" Rocky sounded slightly disappointed, and I shifted uncomfortably, trying to change the topic. "Why did you take so long? Weren't you done already?" Rocky's expression froze. "I had to use the bathroom." "Does it really take that long to use the bathroom?" I glanced up at him and noticed the tips of his ears turning red. I got it. Oh, he was constipated. "Take your time with your meal then, and make sure to eat more fiber. Do you have somewhere to be?" Rocky held my hand, stopping me from running off. "If not, stay a bit, I have something to discuss." I was about to make up an excuse when Rocky interrupted. "If you can't remember, I could call your supervisor." Left with no choice, I mumbled, "I don't have anything going on." The number of people passing by either intentionally or unintentionally gradually increased, and the subtle glances from everyone made me feel like I was sitting on pins and needles. I watched as Rocky ate his meal slowly, and I almost wanted to help him by shoving all the food into his mouth. I couldn't help but ask, "What's going on?" "Don't talk while eating, don't talk while sleeping." Rocky looked up at me for a moment, then lowered his gaze again. "Wait until I finish eating, then we'll talk." I wanted to say, "Can you eat a little faster?" But after he glanced at me just now, I inexplicably felt guilty inside, as if I were an impatient, unfaithful man. It's all because Rocky is just too good looking. Finally, when Rocky finished eating, most of the people around us had also left. "Is there something you want to say? Hurry up," I urged. "I plan to arrange for both families to meet this weekend to discuss the wedding guest list. Things will get complicated, so I'm thinking of hiring someone to help arrange everything. Do you have any thoughts?" I lowered my head and poked at the leftover food on my plate. "You can handle it. I don't have any experience, just let me know if you need anything. Also, you've been to the new house once. Do you think anything needs to be changed? We'll be living there after we get married. In a few days, we can go to the home goods market together and buy whatever we're missing." I could sense his gaze, and a sense of restlessness surged inside me. "I have no opinion. You can decide." Both families managed to get together for a meal and quickly finalized the wedding plans. At my strong request, everything was kept simple. From getting the marriage certificate to holding the wedding, there would only be a short gap of 2 months. Though it seemed rushed, none of the preparation work fell on me. I was still the same as before. "Haley, my dear." As I was heading downstairs, a familiar figure rushed over and hugged me. "Alice." I looked at the tall, slender, cool, and elegant Alice in surprise, almost turning into a screeching chicken. My super gorgeous, powerful, and intelligent best friend had returned from abroad. "When did you come back? Why didn't you tell me in advance? You've got the nerve to ask me." Alice tapped my forehead and placed her hands on her hips, questioning me. "Why didn't you tell me you were getting married? Have you already forgotten about me?" I chuckled awkwardly. "Well, it's a long story. I might even be divorced again in the near future." I hugged her waist and leaned in close. "Besides, aren't you busy with a project lately? I didn't want you to be running back and forth. Go away, stop taking advantage of me." Alice pulled my hands away and raised an eyebrow, arms crossed. "Come on, tell me what's going on. Let's go sit somewhere else and talk. There's a cafe nearby. We can go there." It was lunchtime, and there would inevitably be people passing by downstairs. It wasn't a good place to talk. Alice nodded coolly. There weren't many people in the cafe at noon, but I still dragged Alice to a corner to sit. I explained everything to her, and Alice's expression turned a bit strange. "You're saying you have a marriage of convenience? Rocky needs someone to deal with his parents?" I nodded. "It can't be that he likes me, right? though his actions sometimes did make things easy to misinterpret. Alice stirred her coffee and suddenly asked, "Do you remember the transfer student who sat behind you in sophomore year?" I looked at her in confusion. "Transfer student? The one with yellow hair, named Rocky?" Alice reminded me. I slapped my forehead and suddenly remembered. "Oh, the one who always acted snide and sarcastic toward you. The nouveau riche, right?" Alice let out a chuckle. "Do you remember what he looked like?" I shook my head. "I don't remember. I think he seemed pretty fierce. I didn't dare look at him properly. I was afraid he might beat me up." Alice laughed until tears almost came out. "How could you think that? Do you know what his name is now?" I recalled what I had heard back then. I heard he was transferred here after getting into trouble for beating someone up so badly they ended up in the hospital. He even has tattoos, and looks like part of a gang. You believed that? No wonder you were so scared of him. Alice suddenly asked, "Do you know how I found out you were getting married?" Before I could answer, Alice continued, "I saw it in his social media posts. At first, I thought she was talking about Rocky, but what connection did Alice have with him? Who are you talking about?" Alice didn't answer but instead asked, "Do you know why that yellow-haired guy always acted so sarcastic toward me?" I was puzzled by the sudden shift in topic, but couldn't help being curious. "Why? Come closer. I'll tell you." Alice smiled and beckoned with her hand. "What's going on? What's so mysterious?" I leaned in closer. Before Alice could speak, I heard hurried footsteps behind me, and then I felt a strong force pulling on my arm. I was involuntarily pushed into a warm chest. Before I could react, I was surprised to hear Alice speak first. "Hey, long time no see, old classmate." I turned my head and saw Rocky's face, dark as ink. Rocky arrived with a fierce aura, as if he were catching me in the act, leaving me somewhat bewildered. Rocky's expression was dark, and there seemed to be a hint of panic in his eyes. "What are you doing here?" Alice ignored Rocky and giggled, covering her face. "Haley, why is your Rocky boss so fierce? Does he secretly hit you behind your back? You have to watch out for men with a tendency for domestic violence. Rocky's not like that. His temper's been pretty good lately." I explained. "Some people like to act one way in front of others, but then act differently behind their backs. Haley, you should be careful." Alice's smile carried a hidden meaning. "Come here, I need to talk to you alone." "Can you make him leave first?" I tugged at Rocky's sleeve, whispering, "Can you let me go for a moment? I need to talk to my friend." "You can go back first. If you need something, just say it. Don't mind me." Rocky lowered his gaze, uninterested. "Anyway, what's there for us to avoid? We're married, after all." Looking at the two of them at odds with each other, I couldn't understand what their relationship was. I could almost smell the tension in the air. I looked from left to right. "When did you two meet? Haley, come over here." Alice tossed her hair back, winking at me seductively. "If you want to know something, come here. I'll tell you slowly." I stared at her face. Sigh, my bestie really keeps getting more and more beautiful. I wonder which lucky guy will get to marry her someday. Just as I was lost in thought, I suddenly felt something black in front of my eyes, and a hand covered them. I froze, blinking. "Boss, what are you doing?" Rocky's cold voice sounded in my ear. "This Saturday is my and Guai Guai's wedding. I welcome Alice to attend, but I hope she doesn't do anything to interfere with other people's relationships. We'll leave now." "Honey, he's calling me that?" The hand in front of my eyes suddenly disappeared, and then I realized that my perspective had changed. I instinctively wrapped my arms around Rocky's neck. Then, to my surprise, Rocky picked me up like a child and carried me away. I patted Rocky's arm, trying to make him put me down, but when I met his dark, brooding gaze, I froze. His crimson lips were pressed into a straight line, showing his displeasure. I awkwardly let go of his arm, and as I looked up, I saw everyone around us staring, causing me to feel an inexplicable sense of shame. I quickly averted my eyes, only to find Alice's teasing gaze locking onto me. Just as I was about to ask for her help, I saw her pull a disposable mask from her bag and hand it to me. Alice made a mouthing gesture, and if I wasn't mistaken, she seemed to say, "Good luck." I felt like crying, and for the first time, I understood the meaning of "high places are cold." Rocky's steps were quick, and we were almost at the company when I hurriedly put on the mask. It was just a futile attempt at masking the truth. The surroundings were eerily quiet. I lifted my head slightly and saw that Rocky wasn't going to the company but had turned into the underground parking lot. I breathed a sigh of relief. At least I wouldn't be embarrassed in the office, and my job was safe. Before I could fully relax, Rocky opened the car door and shoved me inside, forcing me to sit. The door slammed shut with a thud. The cramped space made me nervous. I instinctively shrank back, wanting to distance myself from him, but it was futile, unless the car door suddenly opened and I could roll out. Rocky stared at me silently, the tension in the air thickening. I gritted my teeth and forced myself to speak. Why did you suddenly come here? What were you doing with her? Why were you so close? We were just talking normally, I replied, confused as to why Rocky looked like he wanted to devour me. I glanced at him and, terrified, shrank my neck. Can you move a bit further away? It's too stuffy. But instead, Rocky leaned in closer, his tone demanding, but when you're with others, it's not stuffy or too close, right? Do you really dislike me that much? I almost cried. Please don't. I struggled desperately, like a fish out of water. I couldn't breathe, and my eyes welled up with tears. In a panic, I bit him hard, the taste of blood filling my mouth. Only then did Rocky release me. I gasped for fresh air, ready to scold him for his outrageous behavior. But when I looked up, I saw him with his clothes askew, his tall frame hunched down with his long lashes hanging low. His eyes were red, filled with unshed tears, looking as if he had suffered a great injustice. If I didn't know better, I'd think he was the one being bullied. I haven't even cried yet. What are you doing? I snapped. This was absurd. Didn't he know he was destroying his own image? I shoved him hard. Let me out of here right now. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me, Rocky said, tears streaming down his face, his voice hoarse. I know I was wrong. Please, don't leave me. I tried pushing him away, but he wouldn't budge. I stared at the person in front of me, still silently crying. So all the words he was saying, were they all just for show? You're not at fault. I am. I don't think there's any need to go through with this wedding. Let's just get a divorce, okay? I turned my head and grabbed the car door handle, trying to get out. Suddenly, a strong force tugged at my hand. Enough, Rocky. Do you even know where you are? Rocky stopped, holding me in place. I stared at the car roof, confused as to how things had turned into this. I can. Rocky's voice was hoarse. He paused, his face full of embarrassment. I can be a second husband, as long as you're willing to spend some time with me. I don't mind. What are you talking about? I gasped, sitting up straight in disbelief. A second husband? She's back, right? Rocky's voice tightened. Wasn't the reason we had a contract marriage because of her? What's there to deny? Who? Was he talking about Alice? What was going on in his head? Was this some sort of drama? Alice is my friend, my best friend, my childhood friend. We've been in the same school and class since elementary school. Really? Rocky's eyes lit up, his gaze fixed on me. I rolled my eyes. Back in school, I looked malnourished and was bullied. Alice was always there to stand up for me. She's like my second mom. Rocky took my hand, his eyes sparkling. Then we definitely need to invite your second mom to the wedding to thank her for taking care of our little darling. I pulled my hand away from him. So, when did you meet Alice? What's all this about? Rocky stammered, avoiding my question. Little darling, I think lunch break is over. I need to get back to work. Rocky didn't even look up as he hurriedly got out of the car. Wait a minute, I called out, but instead of stopping, he just ran faster. I thought back to Rocky getting out of the car, his shirt a mess, with lipstick marks on his face and faint tear stains. Forget it, it wasn't my embarrassment to deal with. But in the afternoon, I would need to ask for some time off. I couldn't stand listening to Rocky's jokes, or I might end up feeling just as awkward. I glanced down at my shirt, which had been soaked from his crying, and felt a bit uneasy. The situation was awkward, but luckily my shirt wasn't light-colored. I adjusted my clothes and prepared to grab a taxi home. Haley? I turned around and saw Alice standing behind me. You're still here. I sat for a while before coming out. Aren't you going back to work? Alice stared at me, her brow furrowing. Did Rocky pour water on you? What's going on? Is he bullying you at work? I looked at Alice, her face set in a determined expression, clearly ready to defend me. I quickly grabbed her to stop her from doing anything rash. It's not what you think. You misunderstood. It has nothing to do with work. I didn't even go back. So what's going on? Alice raised an eyebrow, then suddenly reached out and grabbed my shirt collar. Did Rocky do this? I shifted my gaze, feeling a bit embarrassed for Rocky. Yeah. He cried on me. He cried again. Alice let out a strange, mocking laugh, leaning on my shoulder. Seems like you're his kryptonite. After your wedding, I'll be able to go back at ease. I was puzzled. Cried again? Do you remember the yellow-haired guy who challenged you back then? He asked you to meet him at the school's back gate. You were about to cry at that time. Alice couldn't help but laugh as she said this, not even noticing that I was trying to scratch my foot beside her. I retorted, I didn't go back then, and I wasn't really that scared. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I misunderstood him. That was his love letter to you, and I was the one who told you not to go. Before I could respond, Alice continued, actually, I went to find him that day. I mocked him and told him to stop bothering you. But it seems like he misunderstood our relationship. I didn't explain, and I made it worse by boasting about how good our relationship was, since he had been talking behind my back. You didn't know, but the reason we were seated separately was because of him. In the end, he got mad and we ended up fighting. I was shocked. What happened then? He cried because of me. Alice shrugged. Though it could have been because I said a lot of things about how great our relationship was and mocked him, calling him a toad trying to eat a swan. I even suspect he switched schools later because I made him feel bad. By the way, he changed his name to Rocky, Alice said, pointing with her chin. That Rocky from your family. The information hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was momentarily stunned. Are you angry? Alice waved her hand in front of my face, a hint of unease in her eyes. I helplessly shook my head and pushed her hand down. No, I know you're just looking out for me. Alice relaxed, her expression turning smug. Good that you understand. With his grades, and that thug-like look, what made him think he was good enough for you? I'm telling you, if he ever bullies you again, just tell me, I'll come back and beat him up. Thinking back to that scene, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Okay, I got it. I looped my arm through hers. Let's go, I'll treat you to a meal. I took the afternoon off. The wedding came as planned. I tossed the bouquet to Alice, who was dressed in a bridesmaid's dress. She caught it and waved at me. In the room, I excitedly counted the red envelopes. Lying on the bed covered in red decorations, I rolled around in excitement. Rocky finished showering and lifted me up. All right, hurry up and take a shower. I waved a stack of cash like a fan. No, wait, I haven't counted it all yet. It's fine, Rocky said without missing a beat. You can count it in the bathroom. I'll wash you. No, please. Let me down. Haley, I like you. Rocky hugged me tightly. I like you a lot. I gently kissed the bridge of his nose. Rocky, I like you too. Extra chapter. Haley, wake up. It's time for class. I heard a voice and groggily opened my eyes. In my days, I thought I saw a familiar figure passing in front of me. Then a mix of cologne and tobacco drifted past my nose. The smell helped clear my mind a bit. I looked around and realized this was a classroom, and Alice, a younger version, was sitting next to me. Am I dreaming? I pinched my arm. Ow, that really hurts. Looks like I've gone back in time. A cool breeze passed by, and I heard a familiar voice. A guy spraying that much cologne. What's his problem? I turned and saw Alice holding a piece of scrap paper, fanning herself with a disgusted look. What do you mean? This is my scent, manly fragrance. Do you get it? I recognized the voice, turned back, and sure enough, it was Rocky, with yellow hair. When he saw me turn, his ears turned red and his gaze shifted nervously. Rocky stood up abruptly, like a paper tiger putting on a show. He pointed at me and asked, "You tell me, is my desk partner accusing me of something?" I gently advised him, "I think at your age, you don't need that much manly fragrance." Leaning against the wall, looking nonchalant, he asked, "You don't like it?" I touched my nose, but stayed silent. Alice didn't hold back, saying, "It smells awful. Who would like it?" Alice shot him a challenging glance, took out a mask from her drawer, and put it on, then urged me to do the same. I checked my pocket and found I had a mask too. I remembered this had happened before in my past life, but back then, I didn't dare look back, and Rocky never spoke to me. I also remembered that Rocky only wore cologne for a few days, then suddenly stopped. When Rocky saw me take out the mask, he suddenly grew agitated. He dragged his chair back and slouched, his whole body radiating a sense of defeat and unhappiness. After a moment, he shifted his chair back and leaned against it. I secretly turned my head, seeing his furrowed brows, looking fierce, but his eyes were full of a mix of frustration and regret. "Why are you looking at me?" Rocky glared at me, his face filled with embarrassment and anger. Caught spying, I quickly turned my head, pretending nothing had happened. Alice turned around at the sound and sneered, "Who's looking at you? With so many people behind, you think someone turned around to look at you? You really are full of yourself." I hurriedly tugged at Alice's clothes, signaling her to stop talking. I still couldn't figure out when these two had developed such a grudge. Suddenly, there was movement behind us. Before I could turn around, I saw Rocky storming out of the classroom in a huff. Skipping class again, what a loser. Alice turned back to me. "Haley, you better not learn from people like him, or I'll break your legs." I sighed. "Alice, you really do sound like my mom." After a moment of hesitation, I couldn't help but ask, "Alice, why do you always argue with him?" Alice was silent for a moment before she spoke. "My mom was deceived by a thug when she was young, and that's how she ended up having me. Because of that, she couldn't even get into college." I'm sorry, I only knew that Alice's parents were remarried, and I didn't know much about her life before that. Alice took my hand. "Haley, don't do things at the wrong age that you shouldn't do." I made a gesture as if rushing forward, saying in a very dramatic way, "I know, our goal is the stars and the sea. Alice chuckled, the heaviness gone from her expression. All right, enough fooling around. The teacher's almost here. Someone from the next class came over to chat. Rocky, where did you go yesterday morning? Were you sneaking off to an internet cafe to play games behind our backs? Mind your own business. I frowned and shot him a disapproving look. Rocky glanced at me casually and, looking a little annoyed, grabbed a handful of his hair and raised his voice. I didn't go, I just went home to take a shower. A shower? I suddenly understood. No wonder I hadn't smelled that weird scent lately. Rocky started shooing people away. You should leave. Stop talking about games all the time. I'm not the kind of person who gets addicted to games. Hey, Rocky, don't kick me. I'm leaving. A while later, Rocky walked back and forth in front of me, occasionally glancing at me. I couldn't hold back anymore. Rocky, what are you doing? Rocky stammered, I actually like studying. I gave him an unconvinced look and responded casually, oh, so, what kind of guy do you like? I caught the emphasis on guy. My expression was strange. Had he misunderstood my sexual orientation so early on? I noticed him looking nervous, and suddenly, I had the urge to prank him. I said, actually, I like guys like the class president, obedient, cute, and good at studying. I watched as Rocky's face changed colors like a painter's palette, then, as if recalling something, he let out a relieved sigh. Well, you have pretty high standards. I thought you liked guys like Alice, those firecracker-like guys. I lowered my head, suppressing a laugh. A guy who skips class every day to hang out in bars and fight, calling anyone a firecracker? Alice's voice suddenly appeared behind us, her expression one of displeasure. Rocky glanced at me and hurriedly defended himself. I didn't. Don't slander me. When have I skipped class every day and fought? Be careful, I'll sue you for spreading rumors. Alice sat down, pulled out some practice problems, and shot back, oh, but you go every other day, right? You sure know how to balance work and rest. Rocky's face turned dark. He couldn't find a comeback and looked at me pitifully. I quickly turned my back to him, afraid I'd burst out laughing. I guess even the usually cold Rocky had his vulnerable moments. In the end, Rocky sulked back to his seat, flipping his book loudly, earning a big eye roll from Alice. Rocky, what are you reading? The sun's come out from the west? Rocky's deskmate, a tall and athletic student, returned with a basketball. Rocky, expressionless, replied, I love studying. Studying makes me happy. The next day, I stared at the pink water bottle, the warm orange planner, and a series of cartoon stationery on the desk behind me, lost in thought. Had Rocky moved away? So soon? A sudden breeze swept through, and I watched as Rocky sat down in front of me. He reached out and gathered up the items on the desk, then, surprisingly, had a Peppa Pig sticker on his hand. To top it off, he had a small hair bun held up with a little daisy hair tie. I stared at Rocky's face suspiciously, wondering if he had been possessed by someone else. Why the sudden love for all these cute pink things? Rocky's face turned bright red, but his tone was still full of bravado. What's wrong with liking these things? Don't they match my style? You don't think they're cute? I was speechless. Look at yourself in the mirror before saying that. Rocky stared at me intensely. I had no choice but to lie. They're cute, even if they don't quite match you. Rocky grinned and showed off his big white teeth. If you think they're cute, then keep looking. I'm generous like that. I quickly turned back to my work, trying to ignore him. He really is a fool, I thought, not knowing where to look. Days passed by uneventfully. The only changes were that Rocky started liking pink things and stopped skipping class. Otherwise, not much had changed. I found a pink envelope in my drawer that Rocky had written, asking me to meet him in the small forest behind the school. This time, I went as promised. To my surprise, his purpose for meeting wasn't to confess, but to say goodbye. He had dyed his hair back to black and now had a calm, composed aura. Haley, my dad is going to be city for work and I'll be going with him. Rocky looked at me, a rare unease in his eyes. I heard you don't date in high school. Is that true? Yeah. I nodded. You're planning to apply to B University, right? I nodded again. B University had always been my goal, and it was where I ended up in my past life. Rocky slowly extended his hand. We'll meet again in B City a year from now. Okay. I reached out and high-fived him. Let's meet at the top. Just don't secretly find another dog behind my back. Before I could respond, Alice's angry voice suddenly came from behind us. Rocky, what are you doing? Want a fight? I didn't have time to stop her. In the end, Rocky was still beaten up by Alice before he left. Rocky, with a swollen eye, still acted defiant, shouting at Alice, my future wife, keep an eye on it. If any other dog tries to steal from me, make sure to beat him up like you did to me. Alice, expressionless, cracked her knuckles and started walking toward him. I rushed to pull her back. He's leaving, don't mind him. The more you care, the worse it gets. I desperately signaled Rocky to leave. Rocky flashed me a grin and waved goodbye. At the freshman ceremony in college, someone suddenly patted me on the shoulder from behind. I turned around and saw a pair of sparkling eyes. "Hey, babe."